Hi, my name is Mark Hart of Osprey Consulting, and today we're discussing an Alteryx integration we've built, moving data from ONESOURCE Corporate Tax to ONESOURCE Tax Provision. But first of all, let's talk about the problem we're trying to solve. In our discussions with customers, we get the question regularly of whether it's possible to move data from one tool to the other. There's a lot of customers using ONESOURCE Corporate Tax to create their UK tax returns and benefit from all of the UK tax content within the tool. ONESOURCE Tax Provision, however, is a global tax provisioning tool and doesn't contain that local tax content. So you can understand why people will want to move data from one to the other. And that's exactly what we've built here, an opportunity to either move your data from ONESOURCE Corporate Tax to drive your tax provision if you're willing to do a tax return early or a draft comp at least, and also moving your final tax computation into ONESOURCE Tax Provision to drive that return data set. But why would you want to do this? Well, first of all, it's about getting it right. It's about ensuring that that final tax computation feeds directly into ONESOURCE Tax Provision to drive an accurate return to provision calculation. It's about saving time. Osprey Consulting remember well the pressure of year end. So transferring tax adjustments instantly and accurately is a real benefit to customers. And it's also about using the right data. It's about leveraging that UK content so that you get that early tax provision as accurate as possible. So today, what are we going to show you? Well, we're going to do a demo in 4 sections. Firstly, we're going to run the integration to move data from ONESOURCE Corporate Tax to ONESOURCE Tax Provision to drive our provision data calculation. Secondly, we're going to make a small change to the computations, and then we're going to rerun that integration to populate our return data set. Thirdly, we're going to run the tax provision RTP process to drive our prior year adjustments. And lastly, we're going to give you a bit of an overview of Alteryx, how it drives automation, and some validations and error checks that we've built into the integration. And with that, let's move over to the first section. So first of all, let's take a look at running our OCT and OTP integration to drive a provision dataset. So first of all, let's take a look at ONESOURCE Tax Provision. Our 2024 dataset you can see is empty apart from some opening balances. We're going to go to ONESOURCE Corporate Tax and look at the computation ARL, which has a PCTCT of 359,000 and lots of adjustments to get us there. We'll head on into Alteryx. We're going to make an adjustment as this is the first year we're using this. We're going to update our 2023 datasets to 2024 in both OCT and OTP. And then we're going to click run and let the process work its magic. In real time, this takes about 60 seconds. We have to delay it because of the time for OTP to process the adjustments and also then get a report to know that it's been successful. So about 60 seconds in total, but let's go back into ONESOURCE Tax Provision, do a refresh, and you'll see those adjustments appear accurately and efficiently directly from ONESOURCE Corporate Tax. Okay, so we're going to do 2 parts of the demo together now. First of all, we're going to make a small change to the computation ARL. We'll make a legal and professional add back change from 10 to £1,000. We're also going to make a capital allowances change so we see a perm and temp impact in OTP. We're going to rerun the process for Alteryx, posting it into our return dataset, and lastly, run the RTP posting in OTP. So let's take a look at ONESOURCE Corporate Tax. You can see our ARL computation has changed in terms of PCTCT by about 200 grand. In OTP, we now have our return dataset and next year's provision dataset. Let's go into Alteryx. We'll change our dataset. So we're now posting into the return dataset instead of the provision. And then let's run the Alteryx process. Again, we've shortened it, but it will take roughly about 60 seconds, including that delay to allow OTP to make all the adjustments required. All right, so let's go back into OTP and we are going to run our post RTP true up. And we'll run that across the entire data set. Brilliant. And then let's take a look at that data set. So we're looking at now our 2025, which was the target of our RTP, and we can see in ARL we've got an adjustment. Let's analyze that a little bit. If we take a look at our temps, we'll see we'll have a true up in relation to our capital allowances. So it's totally targeted to the right temps, about that 200 grand difference. And then again, if we look at the tax adjustments line, we can see a impact of 9,000 at 25%. So our legal and professional change. So the final part of our demonstration today, we're going to take a look at Alteryx in a bit more detail and how it's driving the automation discussed today. We're also going to take a look at the validations and error checking and make one appear so that we can see what happens to the workflow, just to ensure that everybody gets an accurate posting in OTP. Let's take a look at that Alteryx workflow. For those not familiar, please do watch our other videos where we go into more detail, or give us a call, drop us an email, and we'll happily go through it with you. Top right hand side in teal, we've got those error checks that are running a whole bunch of validations that will be flagged to you. Over the left hand side going to the right, we're gathering out ONESOURCE Corporate Tax metadata. So datasets, entities, we're pulling all of our computation data, and we're also running some reports directly from ONESOURCE Corporate Tax, all feeding in to our adjustments. We combine that data and then create what's called the API body in order to send that to OTP, and you can see that's quite a complex process. Finally, we post that data to OTP. As mentioned, we have to slow the workflow down to allow OTP time to be able to process. And finally, we ask OTP to confirm what's being posted and whether there's any errors, and we'll come back to that point in a moment. For the moment though, let's just show what happens when you get an error in a workflow ordinarily. We're going to make some changes to the data sets just to make them incorrect. And this just proves the point that sometimes the errors are just very obvious and we don't need to create validation checks. You'll see what happened. We've got lots of red errors, in fact 9 different errors, and that's created from the fact that actually when we've tried to pull the OCT data, no data's come through, and therefore we've had nothing to process, and that's because that return dataset name was incorrect. But that's a bit of a basic error. As I say, really all we're doing is showing that sometimes the workflow won't run, and we just need to triage to work out why. But let's take a look at something that might be a little bit harder to spot. Now what we're going to do is change the data sets back, but change the mapping file in the back so that we have an invalid adjustment code in OTP. Let's rerun that process again. Again, it takes about 60 seconds. And you'll see that we get a 1 red error message over on the left-hand side. And if we click on that error, we'll have it highlighted for us, which will say there are failures in your submission. We can't give you more details on that, but just like in OTP, where you can take a look at the job report, we have that job report here, and Alteryx has detected that there's a failed number that's not 0. That is also exported to Excel as part of this process. So there's a file where you can go in and interrogate that in more detail. And just like in OTP, it's got all the row information that will tell you which one of the rows failed, so you can identify the exact error. All right, so a quick summary of the demo today. We have run and rerun our OCT and OTP integration in order to populate our provision and return data sets. What have we done? Well, we've allowed you to get a head start with your computations at year end if you have the time to do that, and leverage that UK tax content. We've enabled you to avoid rekeying errors, which is quite a common error. We've made sure that your return and your return data set in OTP are fully aligned and reflect the latest computations. We've used OTP to automate those prior year adjustment entries, which is a real benefit, but only can be done if you populate that return data set, reducing your manual effort and also improving the overall audit trail. And we've used Alteryx to do all this, which gives us a really controlled and repeatable, and more importantly, visual low-code data flow. We've created some validations, and most importantly, we've freed up your time to focus on those more value add activities. All that's left to say is thank you very much for watching and getting this far through the video. I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you've got any questions, as I mentioned at the beginning, my name's Mark, and myself and Charlotte's email address is on screen right now. We'd happily discuss with you more around this Alteryx process and how you could implement it. Equally, if you just want to understand what you could do with APIs, the power of Alteryx within your tax department, or how to get the most out of your tax technology, please do reach out. We'd be happy to speak. Thank you very much.